Hey, thanks for joining us today. Today we're continuing on with our series of discussions about technology. See, this isn't 100% product specific, and it's not about one product. It's more about technology. Specifically today, how we're going to start to use Dante in the residential market. With us today, as always, is the head trainer at AVPro, Jason Dustel. Jason, why don't you take it away? Start telling us about Dante.
Awesome, Jim, thank you so much. You guys should be able to see my screen. As we go through the presentation today, Jim and I are gonna be talking a little bit. If you have questions, please let us know. There's a chat box, there's a question box, type your questions in. We'll go and answer those as we go, and we'll take some at the end too if you guys wanna ask some more questions. So one of the big things about the presentation today is talking about specifically Dante and how Dante does not need to be daunting. It is not a complicated concept, it's not a complicated system, and we'll get into some of the details about that in the presentation today. So, and by the way too, guys, if you can't see my screen or hear me or something, please let me know, we can fix that. So let's talk about the traditional audio video network. And in the example here, we have an AVR, maybe a couple of sources that are plugged into HDMI, there's a satellite box in here. And what you notice about this system, it's very specific to itself. So in other words, if you change out a component, you're probably gonna have to change out cables or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And Dante is a really nice fix for this because everything's running off of the same infrastructure. Here's another good example of a system that can be very complicated. In this particular system, we've got a zone of audio, we've got 8 different displays, and we have 8 different sources. So if we look at the system, we've got all of our sources up here, our analog sources over here. So all of our sources go to the switch, 8x8 matrix switch, 8x8 matrix switch outputs into all the displays. We have audio coming out of the matrix switch into the audio distribution and a separate analog audio source going into audio distribution, and then eventually out to an amplifier and eventually out to a pair of speakers. There are 16 HDMI cables and 56 RCA cables in this system. It can be very complicated, and if one thing falls, then the whole system may fail too. What about this? What if we could take all of those wires, all of those connections, not worrying about inputs and outputs, and we can simplify the whole thing? This is the genesis. This is the big point about Dante. If you notice in the example here, we have a network switch in the middle. We've got an amplifier up here, an amplifier down here. Of course, you connect all your speakers, and boom, that's it. No need for expensive infrastructure. That again does have to be changed. I mean, Jim, I know you can agree with me here. We see system change throughout the years, and everything has to be ripped out and all new stuff has to be put in. Dante really helps with this. So a couple of terms and acronyms as we're going here. AOIP, which we're going to talk about mostly today, Audio over Internet Protocol, and then AV over IP, which may be familiar to you if you've used our MXNet system, Audio Video over Internet Protocol. What I want to point out here is that the IP part is really the important thing. We're going to be sending audio signals over an already established protocol that we all use every day for internet traffic and emails. So as we're looking through this, I just want you guys to be aware of one thing. I grew up in the AV world. I did not have to learn networking until the late 2000s, maybe even 2010, somewhere right around in there. And it was very intimidating. And I thought that, I was going to crash and burn. And it turns out that the IT stuff for an AV person like me was actually pretty easy to learn once you get the hang of it. What I see sometimes is actually the opposite, where IT people try to learn AV, and that actually ends up being a complicated thing. So, the whole point of the Dante system is to send IT or IP data from point A to point B, and to be able to distribute it out to as many zones and as many rooms as you want to. It's building a network. We're making use of already existing protocols and technologies. With the hardware, we're going to be using switches. It don't have to be anything super expensive. We can scale up when we add more switches and add more endpoints. It's a really, really cool system when it comes to building big systems all the way down to a single zone of audio. You can scale it as much as you'd like to.
What's great about this,
the whole.
Oh,
go ahead, Jim.
What I really like about this is, yes, learning a new technology and integrating networking into our systems is initially a bit more work, but once it's there, like you say, we can reuse it just like we can the electrical system in the house. The best part is, and everyone's been through new launches of products and new technologies coming into the AV market, this is a new implementation for already existing hardware, right? These switches and these
Great way
things
to
that
say
we're
it.
talking about have been around for years and years. There are billions and billions of them deployed around the world. Who knows how many we're talking through right now, right, to have this conference going on. So this is really robust, mature hardware, just being used in a different way for A over IP.
And think about mission critical systems, and we have those all over the world where it always has to work, it always has to be reliable. We get that with the Dante solution. We talk a lot about the home entertainment network on top of the infrastructure and making a system in the customer's home that they're happy with and it's fun for them to use. Jim and I actually did a conversation similar to this on the whole concept of the home entertainment network. Check out our YouTube channel, AVPro. You'll see that conversation that we had, probably one of our last posts. We just did it a few weeks ago. But the thing about the home entertainment network, it all ties in with Dante and AV over IP. Future resistant, it's all runoff category cable and regular IP switches. Scalability, you want to go small? Cool. You want to go huge? That's also cool. Flexibility, if you have wiring that's already there and you're doing a retrofit, guess what? You can still use that same wiring, not a big deal. And the reliability factor with Dante and with networked audio and video, it's there. We mentioned a second ago that we have a lot of these systems in very important government type and school type mission critical systems, and it's a great solution for that. Dante, so what is it? Let's talk about the acronym. Digital Audio Network through Ethernet. Exactly what we've talked about so far. We're sending audio signals through IP, through Ethernet protocols. We're taking the digital audio signal, packetizing it, and then distributing it out to wherever it needs to go. Dante's been around since about 2006. And what's nice about this is the Dante protocol does not change the audio quality or the audio format at all. So you can kind of think about it like this. This is actually an analogy that Jim came up with, and I love it. So what you see on the screen right now is a train and a semi-truck. So think about the cargo that's traveling on the train and what the train is traveling on. The train is traveling on some tracks, and that within itself is a network. If we put cargo on the train, we get it to where it needs to go. We offload the cargo into a semi-truck. The semi-truck then has its own network of interstates, and the cargo goes to wherever it needs to go. And it is completely untouched. It's the same cargo no matter how far or short or how much it has traveled. All right, a couple cool things about Dante. The Dante will replace all of your audio interconnects. So we looked before at RCA connections, low-level inputs. We also look at things like digital coax and Toslink and these things. Everything is replaced with category cable. Low latency, that's a huge one. The multi-room synchronization, I love this one because there's nothing more annoying to me, and Jim, I'm sure you've experienced this plenty of times yourself too, where you're in an environment where there's multiple zones of audio and a song is playing and it's great and everybody's having a good time, and you walk to another room and that song is now 3 or 4 seconds behind. It's distracting, it's annoying, and God forbid you're doing this in a Super Bowl type situation where
Right.
one room is getting the sound at a different time than the other room. No spoilers, right? So that's one of the great things about it is the synchronization. And the other things we talked about too, flexibility, scalability, and the pre-wire and any existing wire that's in there that needs to be replaced. It's all category cable, no big deal, easy to find and inexpensive.
Yeah, and it's category cable, which, like I say, it's on everyone's truck. Everyone knows what to do with it already. It's also not a one-to-one replacement, right? You can get, if you're doing RCA connectors into the back of something or a matrix switch, with Dante, we can do 512 channels on a single cat cable, right?
Yeah,
so that's replacing 512 pairs of RCA connectors that you have to put in. It's one click with that category cable that RJ45.
And if it's terminated well and installed correctly, it's not going to pull out like RCAs can. As soon as you move one component, all the cables pull out of it. And think about that big rat's nest of wires back there. And also think about what we introduced to the system potentially when you have a rat's nest of wires like that. We have all kinds of problems with EMI and interference and hums and things like that. This eliminates all that stuff. It's really, really a neat system. As much as I'm learning about it more and more here, it really starts to make sense. Now, I do have a little bit of pro audio background. So hearing about Dante in those environments totally makes sense. But if we look at some of the applications that we're seeing Dante in right now, It's all these big applications and all these big environments and big giant systems. But we really need to think about what we're going to be able to start doing here in residential with audio distribution and with home theater. And there's a lot of really cool applications that we can use for this, and we'll cover some here in the next few minutes. Live concerts, huge. The Foo Fighters, as Christopher Walken would say. Again, my pro audio background, first thing I think of is live concerts. Instead of a giant snake that weighs a ton and is very expensive, and God forbid somebody runs it over with a forklift, and now the concert has been stopped or is going to be delayed because of repairs.
Sure, or it's just humming now that the grounds have all been broken.
Exactly. And I don't know about you, Jim, I go to a lot of concerts, and if I go see someone like the Foo Fighters, of course things are going to happen, but we're expecting a show like that, very high production value, to not have hums and to not have dropouts and things like that. So if it's good enough for these environments and it's good enough for the Foo Fighters, I think it's good enough for residential. Check out this picture here. Oh, go ahead, Jim.
I was going to say, and to be fair with the concert too, they're running a couple as backups, and they are also armored cables.
That's true. It is very redundant.
Well, and smart. You can have direct burial cables too. So category cable is very robust and strong. There's specialty cables depending on your applications.
All the outdoor concerts, summer's coming, and we're gonna have lots and lots of outdoor concerts, and they're definitely using Dante. Check out this picture. This is a studio in San Diego, and again, guys, if it's good enough for them, the audio quality and the reliability is good enough to make these recordings and these really high quality, very expensive per hour studios, I think we can do some really cool work with it in residential, especially when we're starting to stream the high quality stuff. This was a pretty compelling quote that we got from Rob Burrell. He's a 2-time Grammy Award winning engineer. He's worked with Josh Groban and just tons and tons of others. I think he did the sound for a Marvel video game or something. But listen to what he says about Dante. And again, this is very high level production. When I rebuilt my setup using Dante, meaning in the studio, I got really excited. It offers some incredible flexibility and at the same time just melts away into the background to allow for creativity to take place. When somebody at that high level is in the zone and they're in Zen mode and they are being creative and they are working on art, the last thing you want to do is hear a delay in a speaker or hear one of the speakers cut out and now you've been taken out of the moment. It's not fun, but we don't have to worry about this with Dante, and that's what Rob Burrell was talking about.
This is key for us too, and why we're going to use Dante as a tool and a solution, right? Mm-hmm. He summed it up perfectly. It offers some incredible flexibility, and at the same time just melts away into the background, and that's why we want to use it for the residential market. It offers us flexibility and also allows us to do things that we can't currently do at all or very easily the way we distribute.
And think about it, and we've experienced this a lot in our own lives, but we want to be immersed in the movie or the music, and the second one of the speakers cuts out or something like that, we really shouldn't be hearing the speakers. We should be hearing the music, and I think that's one of the really good points here that Rob's making. So good context there, Jim. So how are we going to do this in the home? A couple cool things about it. Distances, not a big deal. We can go 330 feet. If you want to do fiber, you can go miles and miles. And we have a lot of jobs out there where somebody has a pool house or somebody has maybe over by their dock at the lake, they have a pair of speakers out there or something like that. Distance is not a problem. We don't have to worry about attenuation. The signal does not get degraded over those long runs. There's no crosstalk. We talked about that before. There's not gazillions of wires bundled up together. There's less D to A and A to D conversions, and we know that can come with some artifacts in the sound if those aren't done very well. So lots of cool reasons here why we'd want to use this in a residential environment. Now, how are we going to actually do it? Up here on the presentation slide that you see right now is one of our MXNet switches. And what's really cool about Dante is you don't necessarily need some special switch, and some codecs do require that. You don't need a special switch with Dante. Of course, we want to look at things like managed switches. We might want to do VLANs and things like that, but it doesn't have to be something super expensive and super crazy. You can get away with a simple switch with Dante.
Yeah, Dante's requirements aren't very stringent at all. Like I say, some of the other codecs, AVB in particular, they need a special switch, and it can easily double the price of the switch by having to go to that specific piece of hardware.
That's a good point. Excellent point. Now, just for some context, guys, We have Dante here at the top. Over 3,700 products are available right now with Dante. And this is why we decided to go with Dante. It's the big one, it's what everybody's using. And just looking at some of the numbers here on that bar graph, you can see why Dante is pretty much taken over the world when it comes to distributed networked audio.
Yeah, there are more Dante products than all the other products put together. And again, right, we use Dante. We don't make every last component that you will need in the home for Dante, but someone is. And by us using picking Dante to use in our systems, it gives you a lot more options than you have with the others.
Excellent. Okay, so we talked about syncing up distributed audio. That's really important. The music and the sound is playing at the same time no matter what room you're in. Jim, you mentioned this before too, 512 channels. That's crazy. And you can expand more than that if you wanted to.
Well,
Multiple
but that
locations.
means on a single
home
theater, that means we can get a 510.2 system.
Yes. We need a pretty big room and a lot of power, but we can do it.
Yeah.
We can do it. Okay, we talked about the just very quickly before we talked about A to D and D to A conversions. This is all digital, so that's cool. You don't have extra components in the system that have to convert. No big deal. The only analog is the connection from the amplifier over to the speakers. Everything can be controlled remotely. The Dante controller, we'll look at that here in a little while. That can be on your laptop and that can be remoted in. Not a big deal. If you have multiple rooms, it's very easy to link them together. If you want to listen to something in one room and something in the other, and then you change your mind, the football game is over, now you want to play music everywhere, no big deal. It's distributed audio. We can play whatever source we want in whatever room we want. We can break it up into multiple zones, and we can do some really cool stuff with speaker allocations and making the system do some really cool things. And we'll look at that. Jim's got some really cool slides on that here coming up. We talked about long runs, not a big deal. What I wanted to show you guys on this next slide actually are some of the things that you can do with Dante. And this is one of the things we talk about with flexibility. So maybe it's a smallish system and maybe there's not a network switch. That's not a big deal. Dante, we can go point to point, which is really cool. So if we take a look at this example right here, a direct connection, this is an audio control amplifier with Dante, and this is another audio control amplifier with Dante. Now let's take a look at what's going on here. We've got an input from Sonos and we've got an input from Control 4 going into here. There's a set of speaker outputs. So this piece is powering these speakers. This piece is powering these speakers down here. So how do we get signal from one to the other without a network switch? No big deal. Take your category cable, boom, boom, plug it right in. Now you have a direct connection between the two, and it's all running Dante.
This is unique to audio control in this particular.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you. Thank you.
So with audio control, you can take up to 8 of their Dante products and stack them together, and you end up using the audio control GUI versus the Dante control GUI.
Cool. We've got a screenshot of that later too. We'll show everybody.
We do.
Now talk about scaling. Check this out. So here we have 1, 2, 3, 4 16-channel amplifiers. So we're talking potentially 64 speakers here, 64 pair of speakers.
And 64 inputs.
And thank you. Yeah, right. So we've got all of the amplifiers connected to one simple network switch. So if you're using audio control and you want to go direct, maybe it's a smaller system, or you want to scale up and do lots and lots and lots of channels. Look at all these ports we still have left over on the switch, Jim. We can keep stacking, and you set up to 8, right?
Up to 8, and what's cool is this one's showing all the inputs on the top 2, but you can have, and I'm gonna because we're talking about 64 different zones here. I'm going to say this is an estate, so you can have sources all over the estate and have these amps remotely closer to the speakers. They don't have to be in a rack. That's the cool thing with it. And you can have a source going into any of them, and that source can play on the one that's a quarter mile away at the pool house.
Yeah.
So it's not just the outputs that are here. The inputs are also Dante, and they can be moved from amp to amp.
This is a screenshot of the audio control interface, and it's very laid out. It's laid out very simply. It's very easy to use. We just have to tell the audio control GUI whether we're using direct connections with analog or Toslink or something like that, or if we're using Dante. And it's as simple, you see the screen up there right now, there's a screenshot. It's very easy to use, the layout's good, and it's not just, you know, we've seen lots of GUIs in the past where you open up the GUI and there's just buttons and pages and tabs everywhere. Audio control, we want to make it a lot simpler for you. This is the interface that you would see when you're setting up amplifiers, like in this example.
Yeah, so this is the same GUI that they use for their regular analog amps. And where this is different, and I believe audio control is unique in the world with this at this point in time, is we can have dynamic setups, meaning we can change one input to a different output or one input to multiple outputs without having to use a PC. So with Dante currently, how it's used in the staging world and everything, it's static. You're not able to control it with Crestron, Control4, Savant, any of those. It's not possible. But with audio control, it is possible.
We'll take a look here. Now we looked at the diagram before that was pretty complicated with a switch and all those HDMI cables and all those RCA connections and things. So let's look at this a different way. And this is with our MXNet system. So if we take a look here, we'll start from the top. For those of you who are familiar with MXNet, this is our 10G control box. If you're not familiar with MXNet, we got lots of videos on our YouTube channel. We have a lot of resources on our website, so feel free to check out MXNet if you haven't already. Real game changer when it comes to AV over IP. Part of that system is a control box. That's the brains of it all. So we're going to plug the control box into the switch. In this particular case, there's actually two switches here stacked, but we've got a media player over here as our source, transceiver. We've got a 4K display over here. There's another transceiver. That's set as the decoder. This is set as the encoder. So we take all of these different sources, and in this case, there's two, but we could go as big as we want. So if we take these two sources, two transceivers, they're plugged into the switch. The other switch is plugged into the switch. The C box is plugged into the switch, and out of the switch, you have other Dante-enabled products. Over here is an audio control amplifier. Over here is a small Dante 2-channel amplifier that we make. And then boom, here we go, a pair of speakers out here. So look at how much less wiring and less infrastructure and less failure points you have here with the reliability of IP traffic. This is a much, much, much simpler solution. What's really cool is if you hook up your laptop into the C box, you can go into the MXNet Mentor system and you can set everything up that you need to set up right there within Mentor. So after your physical connections, you hop into Mentor and you can do whatever you want and set the system up however you'd like. But what's really cool about this is we could have a display, as you maybe mentioned before, like in a pool house, or actually, here's a really good example. Here's a better example, I think. Maybe this is your pool house, Jim, and all that's run out there because the house was built in 2003 is category cable. And you're thinking, well, man, I really want music in my pool house. How do I do that? We've already got the category cable out there. Take this little Dante 2-channel amplifier, connect it to the system, and boom, there's your pair of speakers right there. Sure. So you have this pool house, you know, in the backyard by the pool, or by the lake, I should say. The house is, you know, way over here. We're on a 5-acre property. There's only category cable. No big deal. Let's put a pair of speakers out there. We don't have to redo everything. And there's a screenshot of the Dante controller. This is a free download. It's out there. And you can kind of see how everything's matrixed here. All of our inputs and outputs are designated here, and we can simply go through between the inputs and outputs, and we can choose here via matrix where we want things to be routed. If you kind of think about this, I know, Jim, you've probably seen these a lot of times in your day, these old patch bays where somebody had to physically unplug and plug back in. I know you weren't a telephone operator. I don't think it was that long ago.
You know, that wouldn't hurt if it wasn't true.
But here's the point, guys. You know, you open up your Dante controller, you open up software, you route your signals however you'd like to route them. You don't have to change anything physical on any kind of switch. Oh, I want to use this room instead of this room. I have to switch the cable over. No, you don't have to do any of that stuff anymore when you have the Dante controller.
Well, but it is static. You don't need Dante controller plugged in. Once you set it up on your laptop and you route everything, you take your laptop away, everything remembers where it goes. Power gets killed, something happens, it all comes back up, and it works as if it is actually hard patched.
That's a great example you just said there, Jim, because especially here in Florida, lightning capital of the world, power goes out, you don't have to reconfigure the system if the power goes out.
Yep, I was told that the nickname for the power company down there is Florida Flicker and Flash.
Yeah, okay, yeah, that's fair. Very fair. Okay, so let's look at another wiring diagram here, and this is including the Dante matrix that we just looked at on the screen before.
Sure,
So
and
we have,
you do need to
oh,
use that when you get away from the audio controlled ecosystem. Even if you
yes,
use our own AVPro Edge, Dante encoders, decoders, or our amp,
mhm.
you will have to use Dante controller at that point in time.
And again, that's a free download off the internet, no big deal. Okay, so let's take a look here. We've got multiple pair of speakers down here, 16, okay? We want to be able to power those speakers and get audio to those speakers from these sources that are off the screen. So if I have a source plugged into one encoder, another source plugged into another encoder, I'm gonna control where and which zones those sources play in through that Dante matrix. From here, we can go out. Let's say there's another pair of speakers somewhere. You could have another decoder come out of the switch, or if you're going to use the amplifiers, we can just come from, this is of course signal coming from the matrix. Okay, cool, I want this amplifier for these speakers. I want this amplifier to power all of these speakers. It all can be done in one system, controlled simply, and all of your inputs and outputs can be routed right there at the matrix with the software. Okay, Jim, we've got some real world examples that you've come up with here that I think are very useful for somebody who's having a hard time wrapping their mind around how Dante works in a home.
Okay, so let's talk about some real world designs. And this, let's take a house. Okay, we have a homeowner that would like distributed audio and surround sound for the TV. And if we take a look at this house, it's pretty typical, right? We've got a great room, dining room, kitchen, one big large open area here. It happens all the time. So what are we going to do for this system? Well, ultimately, we're going to end up with something that looks like this, right? We're going to have an outdoor, we're going to have a patio system outdoor. That's the pink. We've got a zone in the kitchen in red, a zone in the dining room in green, something on the front porch, a couple of the bathrooms in the master suite all have audio. That's what the white dots are there. Let's take a look at this and bite it off step by step. What'll be different with Dante is probably this. Let's concentrate on this great room here, the dining room and the kitchen. What will normally happen when the client says, hey, I want distributed audio and a surround sound for the TV, that TV is going to go in the great room. So let's add these systems up. So if we look in the great room, I added a flat screen on the wall, and it's probably over the fireplace, and it's probably a vaulted ceiling, so you know it's going to look perfect and sound great, right?
R/TV too high.
We do need to make some compromises here, but we do it every day. All right, the black dot's the subwoofer. So we have our LCR and the two orange triangles. Those are my rears. What'll typically happen in that is there's going to be an AVR in that room, and that 5.1 system is going to be standalone. It might be fed a 2-channel input from the distributed system, it might not. But as far as surround sound goes, it is just for watching television shows, right? You might do some 2-channel audio on it, but the surround sound is going to be just for that. And it is going to be limited to just that area circled there in the red. So if we change this and we don't do our typical distribution and we use Dante on the network, what we can do are some different things here. So let's take a look back at this room. We've got our left and right, our center, our sub, our surrounds, our music zone 1, our music zone 2. Let's say it's last weekend and we're watching the Super Bowl. This is a great time of year for this demo because everyone did just this.
Right.
So you're watching the Super Bowl. You've got people in the great room. You've got people sitting in the dining room, and you have people in the kitchen. Now, the sound now is just in that great room. But if we have Dante on the network, we can expand that soundscape to take the dining room in the kitchen. Okay. We can take our LCRs, move on, and then we can have our ceiling speakers for the dining room and the kitchen become surrounds. So if we're watching a football game, coming out of those speakers in the back, that crowd noise is there. So that soundscape now envelops all 3 rooms. As you move around all 3 rooms, you're chipping, you're dipping, you're talking to people, you are surrounded and immersed in that experience, just like the people are sitting in the great room. That's pretty cool. So that's nice to do. This want to be clear, this isn't for sitting listening to 2-channel music, surround sound. These are sound effects. This is for expanding that soundscape to be more enveloping and get more people involved in what's going on. All right, so let's say that the kitchen is kind of far away. So because the kitchen's far away, the people here, they can't hear the dialogue coming out of the center channel. They can't hear the announcers. Well, if you take a look, I just added 2 yellow circles into that kitchen. That's our center channel. We can route our center channel into the kitchen. Because that's on an audio control amp with a DSP, we have volume control for that. And anyone that knows anything about football and mixing for this, all the announcers are coming out of that center channel, right?
Sure.
So now the people in the kitchen can hear what's going on and what the announcers are saying in case the kitchen is too far away, right? Or the volume is too low and it doesn't quite make it all the way there. You can do supplemental dialogue in the kitchen there. I think that's a great use too. Personally, I forgot, we can go to the bathroom here too. So we just added, if you remember our initial diagram there, we had audio in the bathrooms too. So we can take that center channel and put that in that guest powder room that's right here. So as you go to the bathroom after you had a little too much beer, you will still be able to watch that game.
Yeah.
Personally, in my home, I'm going to end up using it more like this. And this is how I would. You have your 5.1 going on here. I'm going to skip the dining room and I'm going to put the center channel at a low volume here in the kitchen so I can hear what's going on in the TV there as I'm cooking and the rest of the family's in there. So like I say, once it's there, we have all sorts of variations and options. So that's how we're going to expand the soundscape for watching movies and television. We can also supplement our audio with that 5.1 system. So we'll go back and we'll just take a look. We've got these 2 separate zones here for the kitchen and the dining room. Let's say we're having a nice intimate dinner and we are just in that dining room.
You and I?
Music. Yes, we just did a great webinar. We're excited about it. We're having some fava beans and a Chianti there. We've got some nice jazz going on. But if you take a look, we added that subwoofer back in. So because it's networked, we could add that subwoofer and supplement those ceiling speakers. Now, right, properly set up, we have DSPs on our audio control amplifiers. We're going to make those ceiling speakers sound a lot fuller and a lot richer by putting that subwoofer back into that system.
Sure.
That's a really nice way to utilize that and also get your customer the most bang for the buck out of that system. And obviously we can do the same thing. Let's add this kitchen speakers back in. We still have that subwoofer going. And then, something that we can do currently, and this is a smaller house and a smaller application here, we can add back in our left and right and our left and right surrounds and have 2-channel go all the way through that room. Now this is a smaller installation there, but I'll remind you, in a larger deployment, or when we take a look at the larger system again, that 5.1 system typically disappears for a lot of that music when we get back to this complete distributed system in the home again, when we take a look at the big picture. So pretty cool. I mean, now we can at this point in time, because we have these audio control matrix amps, do a lot of this in the analog domain also. However, that probably means we have space for a big rack and have everything in the same spot. Okay, so if we take a look at this house, this is going to be a typical house around you, Jason, in Florida. There's not a basement. It's a slab.
No basements here.
No second floor, right? We've got the garage off to the side. So let's say this is even a retrofit. This is the second, third owners going into this house. They want to put this system in. None of this exists. Man, we got a lot of work to do. The nice thing with having a network system and putting in some type of backbone for a home entertainment network, we're running cat cable. It's easier because we can get more signals through it. And if we take a look at this house on this slide, these little red boxes I have through here, kind of suggestions of where we can hide Dante amps. And we can even put our Dante amps for all these speakers, the landscape system, the surround sound system, the distributed audio through the house. We have more options of places to put these in because we have micro systems. We don't have one big rack. We're going to scatter and squirrel this stuff away in the house the best we can to be the least disruptive we are to their living space by adding in this this big audio system.
That's good for retrofits too, right? Like You know,
Yeah.
you got a little TV up there in that kitchen, kind of in that corner. Somebody may have run cat to that kitchen at some
Well,
point
yeah,
in the
actually,
90s,
I was just showing because in that corner space here, let me get my mouse on the right screen. In this corner space here, actually showing there's a place you can put a Dante amp because um,
right?
you've got space there behind the cabinet that's not used for anything.
Sure.
And a lot of times through the top, that's just a pocket. So you're able to get something up there, or even put it up top if there's your cornice trim piece. You can put
Yeah.
an amp up there, and they're never going to see it. These are just ways to try and hide these things around through the house. Obviously, the closets are a good place for it too.
There's like above my cabinets in my kitchen, there's a little bit of a gap, and I could easily hide an amplifier up there. No big deal.
Sure, and here we are with Dante today. As we go further, we're going to have more applications, but right now, at this very second, great reasons for Dante: long runs between sources, which Jason mentioned, short runs in high EMI locations. That's a great place for it. High EMI location is going to be when you have to have the rack next to the electrical box in the house.
Yeah.
That's the only place you're going to put it. You might have problems. Networked audio is going to solve that for you. Retrofits and system expansion, just like we talked about it today, Dante, tomorrow, the world. We did have a couple questions come through, Jason.
Yes, I will check on
I answered them as we went through.
Okay.
One was asking what you're doing on Saturday. I gave them your personal cell phone number.
Okay, cool, good. It's going to be it's like 90 or 100% chance of rain here on the weekend. So if you're going to come hang out with me in Florida, this is not the weekend to do it. Maybe this is the question that you may have answered, Jim, but for expanding the surroundscape, what is the wiring topology? Where is the decoding of all these additional channels happening? What is the Dante routing to achieve that setup? It sounds like in a situation like that, you're probably going to have, actually, Jim, tell me what you think about that question, and we'll see if my mind's in the right place too.
Okay, what do you mean decoding? If we're doing the surround sound?
I think he means with the surround sound.
Okay, so at the surround sound at this point in time, there are a couple of manufacturers out there that do have surround sound processors that are Dante out, or they need to be Dante out, or they need to be AES 67.
Yes.
Those are the compatible formats with everything with Dante. Once it's there, it's on the network, and you can use a Dante controller to do your routing for you. If you want a dynamic system where you're switching around, your best bet right now is to have a surround processor and then go into one of our audio control amplifiers, either Toslink, coax, or analog, and then have that do your distribution for you. That is the easiest way to do it. And really, the easiest way to do it, and the way for us in the residential market to do it, is going to be with the audio control matrix amplifiers at this point in time. They have DSPs in there, so they have everything that you need, and they're matrix switchers. With their GUI, you can control it with Control4, Savant, Crestron, pretty much whatever you want. There are drivers for them already. That's the best way to do it because you're able to have that dynamic switching like we showed you. If you're not using that, you do have to use Dante controller and click through each individual source, sending to each individual speaker. And hey, right, that's not realistic, and that's not going to happen. That's why that audio control GUI is just so fabulous and so important.
That's kind of where my mind was at. Like, does every speaker need its own amplifier? But that answers that question. Ryan, thank you for that question. And Ryan did follow up and said, thank you, Jim, for the answer.
Now you can do that if you really want, and I think audio control would probably like if you did that.
They would love it. Yeah. Yeah.
There are some systems out there with that are networked where a speaker will be a two-way, three-way, four-way. They will use an individual amp channel. There's no crossover in that speaker. Each driver in that speaker has its own amp.
It's all active.
And they use the DSP in the amp to control and tweak that speaker, that driver in the speaker, sorry.
And guys, if you have any more questions, now's your chance. I don't see any more here. Give it a couple seconds here for any of the last questions to come in. If not, Jim, that was awesome. Very simple lesson on Dante, some really cool real world applications. And guys, it's not difficult to do. Don't let Dante scare you. It doesn't scare me at all. Being an AV guy, working my way into IT, not a big deal. Jim, thanks a bunch. Any last words?
No, I was gonna say thank you for presenting.
And again, guys, check out the YouTube channel. We talk about the home entertainment network. There's a Dante 2-channel amplifier video. There's a, oh my God, I'm drawing a blank here, but we've uploaded quite a few videos here in the last few months. So go check the YouTube channel. Let us know what questions you have. I'm really easy to find. Jason at avproglobal.com. Or I'm going to put this on YouTube also, guys. So if you have any colleagues who couldn't watch it live, no big deal. I'll have it up on YouTube here probably before the end of the week. And if you have any questions, let us know. Jim, thanks again. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We will see you next time.